right, Agent Paranormal is back. Yes, we are back. Well, I guess I'm kind of like the only one in studio tonight. But, well, Todd's milling around. But, anyways, glad to be back. Here we are, February 21st. And I think we got a pretty good show this evening. So, we're going to be talking about some past life memories. So, I might be the only one in studio. Todd might join in. We'll see where that goes. But along with me, I've got two of our agents joining in via video. So, Steph and Al, our newest member, joining in from video. Thank you guys for joining me this evening.
For sure.
Thanks for having me.
So, Steph, it's always great having you on the show. Al, I'm super stoked to drag you back into the paranormal. I mean, we go back a long ways. We were co-founders of the Adirondack Paranormal Society way back when, and now we got you on Agent.
Still got the shirt.
So tonight, guys, we're going to be talking about past life memories. Usually, if that's children that are talking about remembering something from their past life. So talking about a little bit about the theories of it. Some of the most common theories are, let's talk birthmarks and also fears. So everyone knows that, if you got a birthmark, somebody says, oh, it's from your past life. That's how you died, is that birthmark. And then fears is usually, you're afraid of that because that's how you died in your past life. So, without further ado, Steph, what were you in your past life?
I actually have a theory that I died in the Titanic. So,
wow, you're not the only one in the group that has that theory.
Really?
Yep. Actually, Pete, he talked to one psychic who actually told him he was on the Titanic when it went down. He was in the lower cabins. And actually, Pete has a fear of being on a boat.
That's crazy. Like, let's assume that I'm correct in my theory. It's like, also, we're always going to be in each other's lives. Like, our past lives, our present lives, our souls are always going to meet up somehow.
I'm waiting to see if Pete's going to yell at me for telling all of his secrets, but...
Pete, we were on the Titanic together. Yeah.
How about you, Al? Anything in your past life that you know about?
My only theory is I died in some sort of war. And the only reason I say that is because when I was little, and I'm saying like 3 to 4 years, I was obsessed with wearing military clothing. I had always wore around a camouflage hat that somebody gave me from somebody they knew in the army. And also everything I picked up was a gun. TV remote control, stapler, and I would always just run around trying to shoot, So that's my theory. I have nothing to support it, but never spoke of it, never had anything that would make anyone lead to believe that. But that's it.
Well, I'm not sure what I was in my past life, and I'm not sure if I want to know or not. So, I don't know. It's crazy. So the reason we came upon this topic is, my wife Maeve and I were actually watching a show that was about children who talked about their past lives. And I mean, this is a crazy thing. I've read into this phenomenon before, and I never knew how expansive it actually was. There's stories of children who know who they were, their names, their family members' names, how they died, where they died, and they can do it with pinpoint accuracy, and it's usually around the age of 3. So I mean, I've got a 2-year-old that's almost 3, and I can't get her to tell me where the crayon is that's sitting right next to her. So, what are you guys' thoughts on that?
Here she says. Well, I don't know. It's interesting because it's uniform across the board, right? You have pretty much the same scenarios that these people experience. It's the same age group. It seems that it fizzles out after a certain point in time. There's some sort of parallel, experiences with it specifically. But and then also they obviously branch out. But I think it's also interesting that they can validate a lot of it. So I don't know. I do find it interesting, intriguing. I think there's a little bit more there than just a coincidence. That's for sure. So
I totally believe that. It's like
Yeah.
like a story from my life. One of my nieces, when she was younger, she had told her mother, she said, when I chose you and daddy and I decided to come down and make you my mommy and daddy, I didn't realize you already had kids. She thought she was going to be
Oh,
an only
interesting.
child, is what she said. She was like 3 or 4 years old when she said it. And, we got thinking about it. And during that time, her mom and her dad were both working full time. And my mother was actually babysitting her older brother and older sister full time all the time. So they weren't really around them a lot. So for her to say, I looked down and I saw you guys alone a lot, and that's why I chose you, is because I thought I was going to be an only child. That was, to me, that was like the closest thing to a past life. And I'm like, that's crazy.
It's a very random thing for a kid to say. They don't just say, I don't know. It feels legit to me.
Yeah.
Well, it's also strange that they still have opinions, and these they can pick and choose when you're still up there. Like, no, I want to be an only child this time around. I'm not going to do this sibling stuff, and you come down and be like, what?
I don't know if I chose to be the youngest of 5 siblings.
I don't know why you choose
I love
that,
to get
Kev,
beat
be
up
honest.
on. Let's go.
You're probably an only child in your past life, and you're like, man, I want all the brothers.
Well, apparently I didn't accept what I wanted, so you gotta appreciate it a little bit more. So, Al, you kind of hinted into us that you have a story of your own. So why don't you go ahead and share that with our audience?
So my stepdaughter now, she's about 14 years old. So this is probably going back 10 years now. Again, around the same age that we start hearing about this stuff, 3 to 4. We lived at an apartment over in New Hartford for I think 2 or 3 years. And while we were there, she started having she started saying a lot of weird things like that. Things like, back when I was alive and things like that. It started off really subtle, and then it got weirder and weirder until one night. But just to kind of give you like a introduction to it, we did live in an old apartment too, and she did at the same time have a friend named Emily, who was a girl with blonde hair we were told in a white dress that she was always talking to, and it was Emily, 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 Emily. There's some other weird stuff with that, but I won't get into that tonight because that's obviously not the theme of our discussion. So the other thing she used to say though is, my parents didn't want, or my children didn't want me, so they kicked me out of the house, which were like, okay, that's really strange. Like, why would a 3-year-old have any opinion on that? And also, she said, I had to bury my mother, and obviously, my wife or my girlfriend at the time, she had a weird look on her face, like, what are you talking about? I'm still standing here. So those two things were a little odd at first, and it kind of, we played it off as, imagination. It's still weird, but whatever. But one weekend we went to a amusement park with her, my wife's family, and we were all there. We were in the hotel room. This is after a whole day at the amusement park. We went back home, and we're putting her down to bed, and we're sitting in our bed, and we said, all right, good night, G. We call her G. Her name's Juliana, and she goes, okay, I'm gonna go die now. And we're like, you shouldn't say that. Like, that's not nice. That's probably not the best thing to say. You could just say you're gonna go sleep. She's like, oh, I know, I'm just kidding. No, it would just be like last time. And we're like,
wow,
what?
So dramatic.
Wow.
Oh, for sure. I'm like, what do you mean last time? She's like, like last time I died, and I went up to heaven, Gerald, and we were like, Gerald, I don't know. This guy came down named Gerald, and he took the stone off my head, brought me up to heaven, and I stayed up there for a little while, and then I picked out mommy and daddy. Obviously, she's my stepdaughter, so she was talking about, her dad. I picked you guys out to come down and live with you again, and we're like, okay. And we're like, well, we started asking her about it. We were, not dismissive of it, because I've always been, obviously, Kev, as you said, we've always been into paranormal, so I don't want to dismiss it, and I wanted to kind of encourage it to see if we can get more info out. So I'm like, who's Gerald? And she's like, oh, he was the guy that brought me up to heaven. He had wings and he carried me up to heaven after he took the stone off my head. And we're like, oh boy. So, so that night, after we were talking about it and everything, we eventually told her to go to sleep. And, my wife and I kind of laid in bed wide-eyed for a while, thinking about what she just said. The next day we were leaving. So we were driving back home, and we were in an amusement park in Pennsylvania. So on the way back home, we're driving and we pass a cemetery, and she quickly looks out the window and she points at one of the headstones and says, that's the stone. He got one of those stones off my head, and Gerald carried me up to heaven after he took that stone off my head, one of those. And we were like, oh my God. So that was the best part of it. Was really, like I said, after that and before that, she had a lot of discussions with her imaginary friend Emily and talking about her children and her mother. A lot of it was vague, nothing is like profound as that night, which was still 10 years later sticks with me. I mean, how can you brush that off? So,
Yeah.
But so that's pretty much it. Yeah. So she obviously had some kids that she had to deal with last time she was around, and they had to boot her out.
So she doesn't have any memories, or she just doesn't talk about it anymore?
We tell her about it. We talk to her about it quite a bit. I shouldn't say quite a bit. As we got older, she knows the story so many times now. It's like
quiz her every morning.
What do you remember exactly now? So she's like, nothing, I swear. But not so much anymore. And it really did start to fizzle out right around 4 or 5. She stopped talking about it. She stopped talking about her friend named Emily. And it was kind of both at the same time, and it was interesting. I don't know if there was a correlation between Emily and this because it happened at the same time. I mean, we found out that the apartment we were living in was flipped, and it was a house that was from like the 1800s, so it was a really old house. So we don't know if there's any correlation there either. But yeah, no, ever since then, it's just been normal kid, whether oddities or anything like that. So unfortunately, but
that's. I mean, I wish I had something like that. I mean, like I said, my daughter's not quite 3 yet, so there's still time. I mean, we do have some interactions with what we think are spirits within our house that she has talked to us about, but nothing past life yet. But like I said, Maeve and I have been watching this show, and we're like, all right, somewhere between 2 and 3, and we just got to start watching for all these other things.
I think what's crazy about that show too is everyone, mostly I think if not all the episodes, they end up finding who they were and able to like Google them or find them in a book, which I would love to do if I could get some information and just be like, aha, there I am.
Yeah, I mean, and at first when I'm watching the show, I'm like, really? Okay, so this one's a famous general. And, oh, you're the captain of the Titanic? Oh, lucky you. And it's like, it's like everybody wants to be famous in their past life. But then they started going around, so, oh, okay, so this was just some random guy on the street that got hit by a tree or something. And then...
everyone wants to be famous and awesome. It's true. Yeah. I mean, who knows? Maybe I could have just died on a regular old boat instead of the Titanic. But I'm sticking with my Titanic story. It's cooler.
Yeah, way better. It's way better.
Yeah,
I died on the Titanic. Meanwhile, there's a cutaway, like in Family Guy, and you're on a rowboat and it flips.
I don't know.
Gosh darn it, that would happen. That would happen to me.
It is interesting. There's a couple scientists who have performed pretty extensive research on the Matadors. Ian Stevenson, who from I want to say the 70s up until recently, till he passed away, had cataloged a lot of these occurrences and followed up with them, and has scientific document. I mean, he followed the scientific theories and everything, and applied it to this, and he has catalogs of all these different experiences that confirm it. I mean. Yeah. It's wild, and there's other people doing it too now, like you've noticed on the show. So it's definitely something that's
there is a university, I want to say is down in Virginia, who is continuing that research. I can't tell you if it actually was in Virginia because I'm a terrible host and I didn't research that. But but yeah, there is a university, there is a doctor that is heading up that research, and they are searching for anybody that has children that are experiencing that to reach out to them, and they can try and help them if need be. But they also have on their website, I did see that they had a list of things to look for with children, talking about past lives.
Hmm.
And yeah, it's interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
On another show on Netflix, they talk about on one of the episodes past life experiences, and there's one point where the guy who's doing the investigation goes to a house with a woman and her son who's talking about how he was in the previous life and he was a little baby that got shot in a drive-by. Like he knew this, and what the guy would do is he would go to the house, and obviously it's a toddler, so you can't really have really intelligent conversations with a toddler, but he would bring pictures, and he would show a picture of the house of the individual of the previous life of where he lived, and they'd show another random house, and the kid would just that picture right there, like no question, like that, or a playground where he would go, and then another picture of a random playground, and it was 100% accuracy, which was kind of interesting too. So there's definitely something to it.
So I guess our next step is, with us being paranormal investigators, if we get called in that kind of situation, how do we act? How do we confront that? Besides doing the actual research for them ourselves, the historical research to see if it actually all lines up. I'm not sure if it falls in line with ghosts and spirits. I think it's definitely still in the realm of the paranormal.
That's a good question. I don't know if it does either.
Yeah.
How do you investigate that? Unless you try to connect with someone who's from the past life, but I don't know how you would do that.
Like the show that we watched was called Ghosts Inside My Child. And like even seeing that title, I'm like, I wouldn't call him Ghost Inside Your Child. It's like,
yeah,
really a ghost, a spirit, but
right now, are we all ghosts inside a body?
I mean, that's basically
like Frankenstein. You just take the brain, put it in a different body, and continue.
All right. Do you guys have any birthmarks that you think could correlate to your past life?
No.
Not that I know of.
Yeah, me neither.
I know my brother has a big one on his back. My daughter has a couple that show up only when she's really angry on her forehead.
It's like a Hulk move right there.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah.
You won't like it when she's angry.
Well, who likes any toddler when they're angry? I mean, really, they're not the easiest.
If it's not your kid, then okay.
That's true. Yeah. No, I don't have any birthmarks that I am aware of, but I have heard that. I've heard from those different stories where a kid would say, I got shot in the head when I died, and I was in a war or something, and sure enough he's got it goes back, finds a soldier, whatever war he was in, and they can find out, he got shot in the head right where the birthmark is. So it's like there's a lot of interesting information there, but
yeah, my friend said she has a birthmark on her stomach, and she's pretty convinced she was stabbed in her past life.
Oh, that's high hopes.
You never heard of any
I know, right?
Previous ones. No, it's always murdered or died in an accident or.
I know, that's true.
It's not like I got a funny walk from a cramp.
It's not like there's a birthmark for sleep, dying in your sleep.
So let's move on to fears. So, Steph, what's your fear? Does it correlate to what you think is your past life's death?
Yeah, definitely. I don't know if this is everyone's fear or if it's a typical fear, but there'd be a couple times in my childhood where like you go to see these huge ships, and just being next to the bottom of the ship, just that area, or just gives me I can't. It just scares me so much. But being on a boat for the most part, okay. Yeah, is that what that is?
The boiler room of the
yeah, there's an actual phobia name for it. I mean, everything's got a phobia name, but that's.
I know, that's true.
Yeah.
Botophobia.
I did not know about that. I'll have to Google. I have to Google that.
Hull of a botophobia.
Uh, I did have a psychic
Freaking
tell me
boat.
that I was on second class of the Titanic, but I mean,
Wow.
maybe I got like sucked underneath or something. I don't know. Don't want that.
Well, I guess that
So you were
second
one of the
class didn't help
musicians on
you
the
now,
top.
did it?
Oh my God. I wish. I want to go down an epic way playing the violin. No, the cello. I changed my mind. The cello.
Yep, that's right. Cello it is. That'd be my choice too.
Yeah.
Yeah. In my luck, I'd be the guy that fell off the back and hit the propeller on the way down.
No. Oh my God. I hate that.
Oh man.
So how about you, Al?
Yeah. You know, yeah, and as you asked that question, I can't think of, obviously, like certain things freak me out. Like I do have that creepy feeling of like large boats in the water, the thalassophobia or whatever they call it. Or just like being in the vastness of underwater is like that's freaky to me. Sunken
Mhm.
ships, not a fan of that either. The whole concept of just being down in one of those, there's no quick way to get out. Not a fan there. But yeah,
Yep.
I don't really have that correlation. I mean, I don't, heights don't really bother me. I mean, spiders aren't like terrible to me, but it's not like I got bit by
What? Spiders are terrible.
a. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's a good question, Kev. I don't really have anything to say yes or no that I was definitely like, I have a horrible fear of buses, so that must have been how I went getting hit by one. But
Oh God.
Kind of along the lines of me. Like I'm afraid of spiders. I'm not afraid to say it. I'm a big guy and I hate little spiders. But I can't imagine, me being swarmed by spiders in my past life or anything like that. It's like, yeah.
I think everyone just hates spiders. They're the worst. They're the devil.
Yeah.
I'm the only guy that died from a dandelion egg bite. But I mean, I've
Although
got
it'd be
another
easy to find
fear,
you.
but I know that that's from childhood, and that was mirrors in the dark. There is a name for that, and I'm not sure what it is, but I'm not a big fan of mirrors in the dark, and that actually stems from Bloody Mary. That doesn't stem from past life. That's this life.
Oof, yeah. Bloody
Your
Mary
older
did some things
siblings,
to me
right?
too.
Yep, same here.
Ooh.
We can all thank
I
our
mean,
older siblings for that one at least.
there's some truth to the being scared of mirrors though. Like they're supposed to be a portal to another world, aren't they?
Yeah.
Like you
Could
can't
be.
face them towards the window, and there's all these rules for mirrors. I have a window across that mirror though, so I'm screwed.
Yeah, there's a couple. There's like you're not supposed to face a mirror to another mirror or something. It's like, why? If
Yeah.
it's a portal, then they're just caught in a trap. It's going like, I mean, if you've ever played the game Portal, if you put one portal on the opposite side of another portal, you're just stuck in an infinite loop and you're not going anywhere. So
That's a good point.
You're trying to
We
brush
should-
your teeth,
So, I just lost my train of thought. I derailed.
Happens to the best of us.
Happens to me daily.
No, do you think that there's like certain interests that you have that would be correlated to another life? Like we're talking about fear, obviously, but maybe it doesn't have to be associated just with fear. Could it be,
True.
I really like playing guitar? I mean, could you have done something with that? Do you really, Kev, you really like drinking beer? Maybe you were a beer craftsman in another,
Maybe
another life? I
drown
don't
in a
know.
big vat of beer.
That sounds like a good way to go.
To quote one of my favorite movies, Beer Fest. We used to think that drowning in a vat of beer would be heaven. This isn't heaven. This sucks. Actually, that was a Beer Fest. That was Strange Brew. But anyway.
Just as good.
I mean, the other thing is, how long does a spirit have to be gone before it transfers into another body?
I don't think there's a set time personally. I mean, I know a lot of people theorize that it's like the day of your birthday is probably the day you die. You just basically go right into another body. I don't know if I believe that because, the theory is when you pass, you see your loved ones coming to greet you. I mean, that can't happen if they're jumping into another body already.
Yeah.
So I think I don't think there's set times. I think it's just like, I feel like going down into 2020 because you know what? That pandemic looks super fun.
Well, the one thing that I have seen is there's a lot of people where their kids are talking about their past life and who they were in their past life, and the quickest one I've seen that's recorded is 4 years. Um, so before that,
Huh.
it's a minimum 20 years after that. And like I said, there was one episode on that series, and it was talking about that it was a brother of the child's mother. So it would be the child's uncle
Mm.
passed away like 3 or 4 years before the child was born. And then as the child started, talking about their previous life, there's a lot of things started coming out that it could have been the uncle. But before that, most of them talk about 20 years. There's a lot of them from World War II. They're talking about you know talking about big traumatic deaths in World War II. So it's like, is there some kind of like gateway we need to go to and check in, or you
Yeah.
know
That's a good question. I know I've seen a lot of TikToks too where kids will talk about their past lives and it's related to 9/11. So it's a lot of kids are talking about 9/11 about now.
yeah.
So it does kind
Just
of go
have
with the
fears of heights and buildings, and if any of those have that,
Yeah.
fire. Yeah.
yeah. Well, I mean, also
Yeah.
the whole concept of near-death experiences kind of could shed light on that, I guess, too, where the people that do
Mm.
have had those, they see the light, they see their loved ones get pulled back. I think that there definitely is like that decompression time frame, where they're like, all right, I need a breather, I need to take a break before I go back down and do this again
Yeah.
because
Yeah. Well,
that was
there's
a long
also
haul.
like a theory that you kind of go in your life and you review everything. You review your whole life again and kind of relive it again.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy. And if we're going to go really deep, like there's this one psychic talking about just basically time is not linear. So right now, someone you love is with you who is actually alive with you now, but this is like their future spirit after death in review, if that makes sense.
That's what I've heard too, is that especially the people that have had the near-death experiences, that the whole concept of time doesn't exist, and time and space are not an issue when you're up there. It's like people that have like died well, been dead for like 2 weeks or in a coma say it was like a 30 year. It felt like an eternity when they were there. Or other people like 5 minutes on the table flatlined, and it's like I felt like I was there for years. So it's like really hard to pinpoint it. I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, like Peach talked about it before, on the metaphysical aspect, is that when you die, he said that basically you are kind of, you're not stuck here, but you're like, just, I don't know, you're here for like 2 weeks. Your spirit is still here for a matter of about 2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
I guess the belief behind that is so that you can, tie up any kind of loose ends, say your last goodbyes and stuff like that.
That makes
And
sense.
it's funny that, I mean, that also coincides with some of the most activity that people see with the recently deceased is within the first 2 weeks of them passing.
I actually heard of that one, so that makes a lot of sense.
It really
And it's
does,
perfect
actually.
way
Yeah.
to.
Mm-hmm.
Because it does
Yeah.
seem to fizzle out sometimes too. You have those experiences where somebody dies, and then you're like, "Oh, I saw, so and so," and then it just kind of, just like with the reincarnation stuff, it kind of fades away after a little while. So, um, I know there's a couple people that if I get 2 weeks, time frame, my brother-in-law who's a skeptic, I'm definitely gonna mess with him. Um, you know, freak him out a little bit. A buddy of mine, but just for fun, I'm gonna have to, knock something off of coffee cup off his table or something. I don't know. We'll have to do something
Hell
fun,
yeah.
but
Oh, we'll get him.
oh
We'll
yeah,
get him.
oh
that that
yeah.
does make sense though. Go ahead.
Are you talking?
I don't know. I was talking, then you were talking, and then I was talking, then you were talking. So you can go ahead.
I wouldn't. No, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, my grandmother actually visited me in my dreams, and it was almost exactly 2 weeks, like since she passed. So it does make sense to me.
That is interesting. I don't think I've ever
Yeah.
had. Well, no, I mean, I guess like I have had dreams like that. My wife had one recently this year where her friend passed away, and she hadn't talked to him in years. And like 2 nights later, she said she had a dream where he just came to her and was like, "Hey, everything's good. I'm all set." Basically, like, just want to let you know I'm okay and that I'm up here, and it was just matter of factly like that, like nothing else on it. So it's like, wow, you never know.
Good. Got my
That's
bus
amazing.
pass. Yeah. Waiting for my next body.
Yeah, I got a C- this time around, but I'm working on it for next time. But I don't know. It's interesting. It
I mean, I've heard
definitely is.
that there's a
Go
little
ahead.
delay, so you go ahead.
Yeah,
You went
One of you
first.
talk.
There's just a slight
No,
delay.
Yeah, but there's also the concept of the what do they call it? The deathbed visions that people have too, where as somebody's dying, say that loved ones come to visit them more frequently. So like and again in that show I was watching on Netflix, this one guy follows around people on hospice and talks to them, and he says one of the common things is as they're getting close to dying, um, they'll start saying, "Hey, a loved one keeps visiting them. It's always somebody who's passed away, and it's always somebody. It's always like a loved one, a parent, somebody close to them. And it's like, all right, we're getting ready here, and it's kind of like prepping them to pass, So for those individuals that don't pass as quickly as somebody like on the Titanic or 9/11, maybe they have that kind of like transition period where it's kind of like they go in and out and in and out. So it's interesting though.
Well, 9/11 was an interesting situation. I mean, you're bringing up that you got the loved ones that are coming down and collecting them. That is a theory, is that there's always somebody who helps collect the soul to bring them up to a more elevated level. For 9/11, for how it happened so fast, there was actually one incident where, well, actually not one, but it's one spirit that many people had seen, and it was actually at the landfill where all of the remains from the buildings was actually transported to. So the landfill itself was on Staten Island. So what they would do is they would load up the trucks with all the building, and they would truck it to Staten Island, and then they'd go through a sorting process. And the reason for the sorting process is they were still looking for human remains throughout it. Now, in that area, there was multiple sightings of a World War II era dressed nurse who was walking around offering people sandwiches. And
I just got chills.
nobody ever said that they accepted a sandwich from her, but they didn't know who it was. Well, now it's theorized that she was actually a soul collector. And what she does is she is a general spirit who is dressed in a helpful manner, who is actually there to help the souls move to that higher plane.
That's beautiful. Oh my gosh.
I mean, I have a book that I read on that. That was an amazing story. It was actually about one of the investigators who was actually put in charge of the landfill itself. And that was like, I bought the book because of that story in it, because I thought it was going to be more about the spirits of 9/11 and stuff like that. Nope, that was the only thing in the book. And it was like 3 pages. But I mean, the rest of the story that he has to tell about the care that they took into, moving everything got so much respect moving from the original site to the landfill and then where it went after that.
Have you heard if the museum is haunted?
I've heard some things about it. Like have been reports of people walking up to others and saying they need help or something like that, and then when they turn around, they're already there and stuff like that. Other than that, there's not a lot of talk of the spirits around that area. I mean, you could do a Google search and you might find a couple of stories, but it's a hard situation. I mean, we're still the generation that sat there and watched this happen, so it still has a hard scar on a lot of people. So they don't want to talk about that yet. I mean,
makes sense.
Titanic stuff. I mean, they just started bringing that stuff up in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
And right about then is when everything was like, okay, let's start talking about ghosts of the Titanic and stuff.
That's true.
So
It's still a little too close to home.
yeah.
Then,
Yeah. Have
so
you
they
guys
say
been to
there's
the
two types
museum?
of.
It's amazing.
I definitely would love to check.
Yeah,
Seems
it's
interesting. Have you
great.
been there? Have you gone?
Yeah.
You have? Yeah.
I went and I cried. It was so good though.
You can imagine.
Mm-hmm.
Well, so what about this? So if there's two types of hauntings, they say, right? There's like the residual ones where it's like a playback record, and then there's like the intelligent hauntings, right?
Yep.
So is it possible that one entity that passed could fill in both shoes, I guess, for lack of a better term? So say you died at 9/11, and it was so abrupt and so quick that something happened that caused that residual haunting, but still you got taken out by the nurse lady who was handing out sandwiches. I mean, do you think that's still possible? That you could be, you've imprinted yourself somehow
Mm-hmm.
with that traumatic experience, but you went on, and then people are still seeing that old playing of it. Because usually those, Kev, as you and I can attest to, I mean, going to risk any battlefield now, 100
Yeah.
years after, those are still happening. Do you think those are still those actual individuals and those spirits, or are they just a imprint of the energy and the extreme drop that came from it?
I've always thought that too, actually.
What constitutes? Are you stuck in that cycle, or is that just like a photograph of you? You know what I mean?
I
Mm-hmm.
think that's just like, I think it's just energy at that point. It's no longer the spirit. It's just a remnant of something that was there.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the only way I can really think about it is, you leave up a screensaver up too long and it's going to burn an image on your screen. You can still use the screen as a computer later, but you're still going to see that phantom of the screensaver on it.
Yeah.
I mean,
With
as for
dramatic
that, one of the best stories I have for that one was out of the UK, and it was a family moved into a home, and every single night at the same exact time, they'd hear somebody walking up the steps, coming up to the second floor. And they could go out in the hallway and actually see this person walking up the steps. But every night, when they see this person walking up the step level is right at their shins. So the step is actually going through the shins. And they found out later on that the steps were actually raised a foot and a half about 50 years after this person probably lived in the house.
Wow.
So that's your example of residual. Is they're just going to keep doing the same thing, and if you change anything, they're going to keep doing it. So you could take out the steps, and next thing you know, you got somebody walking upstairs, no stairs, but they're still walking up steps.
Stairs,
Right? Like, what if your past life right now, like, it has its residual and it's just going back and forth, and you just like what would happen if you were like to come across your own situation? You see like your past life
that's
ghost.
crazy too.
Then we can jump into, you're saying that it's not linear. Life is not linear. So
True.
if you relive your same life, or you're reliving everything, is that what a doppelganger is?
Oh.
When you bump into it.
Like scanners right now.
On the show. We can't beat this, Kev. We gotta wrap it up.
Mic drop.
Oh wow. Yeah. No, I guess you think of it, if you apply logic to it kind of makes sense, right? Because doppelganger takes energy away from you when you show up. Maybe it's just when you show up again, it's just kind of like a merge, and the energy doesn't know where to go, and it just happens that way. So, I mean, because technically you're a doppelganger for your doppelganger, so why couldn't you steal its energy too, right?
Yeah, and most people that actually report seeing a doppelganger have yelled out the person's name or tried to talk to him, and they just keep going. They don't acknowledge anything. Now, if it's the same person and they acknowledge it and talk to them, that would be considered a mimic. So
I didn't know that.
Where are we at now?
Well, that was on that. They had an episode of The Mimic on that haunted show on Netflix. I think it was called The Haunting or The Haunted Show, and
Oh,
it
yep,
replayed through a lot, and that was one of them on there. So it's the only time I've ever actually heard of a mimic, and I assumed it was a doppelganger concept, but I guess not.
Yeah, I've never heard of a mimic.
Yeah, it's a fun read. I mean, there's a lot of reports of mimics and stuff like that. I believe Hans Holzer kind of wrote about them at one point, but I mean, mimics go back for a long time. You know, like
Creeps me out.
Reincarnation now with that, like, how's a mimic come to be? Do you guys just like, does your energy just get cut in half, and it's like, all right, we're sending half you this way, half you that way, and then you're getting two things created? I mean,
generally they attribute mimics as being an evil entity. It's mimicking your abilities because it wants to possess those abilities.
That makes sense. Okay, because when you said mimic, my mind went to like demonic or evil. So
that's not.
So maybe nice. I did know what it was. Someone's trying to mimic me. Stop mocking me.
We've got our own group members commenting and going, "I've never heard of the mimic either." Well,
good. I'm not alone.
Looks like I have some training to set up for the group. So.
Yes, I want to learn all the things. Yeah. Oh, you know what another trend is on TikTok right now? People are talking about past lives. They go, yeah, look, TikTok's amazing. If you say it correctly, it's amazing. But someone says, they're like, yeah, it's the best. But there's this one trend.
Going to YouTube. Okay, go on with your
There's
TikTok.
one trend where you talk about, like, imagine, like, your past life body is buried on the grounds here somewhere. Like, you're buried on Earth somewhere. It's like
concept though, yeah.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Beat my scanners thing.
Wasn't me, it was
TikTok. Making me off my game here.
I've seen that on that show. I mean, where the kid actually goes and the family brings him to the grave to basically say goodbye to their past life so they can move on with their current life. But I didn't think about it. Yeah, your body is 6 feet under right there, man, and you're standing on top of it.
Yeah, you probably got a couple of them, too.
And hopefully not in the
same one kid
grave.
That talked about being a fighter pilot. He had the same thing, right? Is that the one you're talking about?
Yeah.
Yeah, he was a fighter pilot in United Kingdom.
Wow.
American kid, and he got shot down in Japan somewhere.
Oh, that must have been a different one. Cause the one that
that's what I heard.
The one I read about, he was actually in the Royal Air Force, and I don't think he was shot down. I think he actually had engine trouble and ended up crashing and dying.
The one I heard was always a little kid would cry in his sleep saying, little man's on fire, can't get out or something. He kept saying that over and over and over. And that was what started it. And what carried through was that he knew all these things about airplanes when he was like 3 or 4, like the makes and models, the types. And he had a serious obsession with it. And he kept saying he was on this certain boat where they knew this certain guy. And his dad traced it all back. And they actually took him on a boat to where his plane crashed in Japan, one of the seas around there. And like they kind of generalized where they thought it was. But then he kind of like did some kind of ritual to be like, all right, you got to put that light behind you and move on.
Yeah.
And he did it, and then ever since like he did it, the memories all faded away, it sounded like. So it's like one of those closure things, So.
But can you imagine being a kid and remembering how you died, like especially if it was horrific? Like, how do you protect your child from that? It's like you want to, though. Like, you're like, I want you to remember, but like that sounds terrible, and I really don't want you to experience that.
Don't forget this. That's tragic, but don't forget it.
But could you tell us again how you died, how the guy shot you?
Yeah.
Like,
relive the moment.
I know you cry every time, but I think we really need to talk about this.
Yeah. Then you can play with your Legos.
Yeah. Like that show, The Ghost Within My Child, I feel like all the deaths were just horrible, and the kids would have nightmares, and they'd be like, oh my God, like, but like remembering that you're trapped and everything's on fire and you can't get out, like, that's terrifying for anyone, for an adult.
It's never, I died on my deathbed, my family surrounded me, all petting my hand and all that stuff. So it's kind of like, do you only move on and have that kind of memory when it's a tragic incident, because it was so tragic, it develops that kind of energy that you remember it.
In my
I-
daughter's experience to that theory, it didn't sound that way. She didn't talk anything about being tragically killed. I mean, dying in any tragic way. She talked about, well, her kids not wanting her, and then her burying her mother, but she never mentioned anything of a tragic death. So, I mean, not to say that she didn't, but I mean, in her scenario, she didn't mention anything about being like shot or, hurt in any way. So
Right. Her focus is how she lived, not how she died,
yeah,
which I would prefer that if I could choose for my kid. Let's remember the good times
yeah.
when your kids kicked you out.
I mean, it's not as bad, but still kind of
Right.
sucks.
We were a rich family. We were living in London. It was great. And then we started walking on the first, the biggest boat in the world. Stop. Okay, that's it. We're not going to listen anymore.
Just leave it there. Just leave it there.
Forget the rest. Move on.
That's your daughter's like past life story is kind of familiar. I think was at Hyde Hall. Isn't that the sort of the same story where the mother got kicked out and then she put a curse on the house?
She was. I don't know. That's a good point. I don't know. I have to look into that one now.
Yeah, I don't know where I learned that, but I could be wrong. It might have been Ghost Hunters that told me that about Hyde Hall.
Now I got hurt.
I think we just got our first case to look into the research of the history of Hyde Hall for Al's sake.
I know, that'd be crazy, right? If you discover who she was.
Yeah, right. If I
Craziness.
find anything about an angel named Gerald there, I'd definitely be weirded out. That was the only name she dropped was Gerald the Angel. So
Gerald the Angel.
Yeah, Gerald. She said. I mean, she could have mispronounced it too. Who knows? But yeah.
We'll have to talk to Rich and Pete, and maybe I think Chris might know about that too because they investigated Hyde Hall not too long.
I love Hyde Hall.
No, that wasn't. They I forgot. Well, whatever. I think Chris was shooting some video stuff there. But yeah, we'll have to look into that and see what we can find.
Yeah. I mean, I wonder if the reason too you remember your past life is like because every life you're supposed to have a new lesson and a new journey. So it's like maybe if you're remembering your tragic death, it has something to do with the lesson that you're supposed to learn in this life. I don't know how, but
I'm sure it's not accidental. Like if somebody forgot to flip the switch of don't remember, somebody up there must be messing up. They keep doing it. Frank, you're fired. You can't remember to forget previous life fun. So no, I think that makes sense though, right? You could, and even if it's subconscious this time around, you're like, okay, listen, it helps you grow into what you're supposed to be doing. So
yeah, I mean that's the point of I think reincarnation, like hypnosis, where you you try to remember because it's supposed to help you learn what your life lesson is in this life and how to move forward.
I think is the hypnotic term for it or whatever. I think that makes sense. So I mean, yeah, that's what you're going for. That's the goal. So
yeah,
is we're gonna have to
all
think
the
about
lessons.
It. Well, I'll try to remember my past life, my current life, and my next life.
There's meditations out there. I did this one meditation on YouTube. Brian Wise, I think his name is. I don't know. He's been doing this for a while, and I tried doing it. And you get all like peaceful, and you're like, all right, I could see like I'm in a trance. This could work. And then it goes from all right, like be relaxed to now look at your feet. What shoes are you wearing? And I'm like, well, I can just make anything up now. I don't feel like I'm in another world.
Yeah. Well, I know. That's kind of the thing. Is like, am I just imagining it at this point, or am I wearing sandals and looking at the dirt floor from the Roman days? It's hard to tell.
It is. It's hard. Well, it is hard to tell, and it's hard to get psychic readings too because it's not like you can confirm what they're saying. How can you confirm that?
I mean, unless you like manage to say, I see a plaque on the wall that says this guy's name, and something you could really pinpoint.
Right.
It'd be kind of hard.
So
exactly.
We've talked about this before on the show, but now throwing in the past life variable, is that a possibility of what deja vu is? Correct. Also.
I've definitely thought of that. I think so.
to the cyclical versus nonlinear or parallel time frames, it could be something you're doing in a different life. I mean, I've gotten it to the point where I'm almost like, okay, this is what's going to happen next, and oh shit, yeah, that actually did happen. But it's interesting.
Maybe. I don't think. I don't know. I mean, I know I brought it up, but I'm like, maybe not. But at the same time, it's like I'm sitting here. I've had deja vu where I can like you're saying now. I've went through and I can tell you what's gonna happen next. But there's also times where like I'm wearing my exact same clothes and this and that. So it's like, so am I reliving my life? Do I have to relive the same exact life over again until I learn how to do it? Because I'll tell you what, I probably should reset right now because I don't think I'm doing it right yet.
Like, what am I doing wrong? I thought that was good.
Yeah. It could be something so small, though.
Yeah.
Like the lesson you have to learn can be just like, I need to be kinder to people at the end.
Remember that
Or
spider you stepped on? You should have let him go.
Yeah, but sometimes mine, I'm like zipping up my coat, and I'm like, I look over to the left, and I'm like, what am I learning there? Like, remember to zip up my coat all the way? I don't know. Like sometimes for me, it's not. I don't see them. It's not meaningful events for me. It's usually something opening up a jar of pickles.
Yeah. I still get
Sometimes,
nervous
but,
though when I
yeah,
have
I
some
can see
deja
other
vu.
things.
Yeah.
It's
Like
like
I'm
when
almost
it's
like, okay,
overwhelming.
something. Yeah, but I'm like, okay, something big about to happen. Like, what's the purpose of me remembering this very small motion? And then nothing happens, and I'm like, what was the point?
Yeah. Well, that's the other thing too. Is I mean, now we're getting, I guess, into the concept of synchronicity, where it's like
Mm.
just really weird things happening, like in tangent, like we did stupid things, and we know my wife and I always have this happen to us. But one example was marbles. Like my daughter mentioned marbles one day, and 3 times throughout that day, marbles came into, we were watching a show and somebody was talking about marbles. Something else happened with marbles too, and I'm like, what's going on with that? You know what I mean? It's like just and it's like
Yeah.
there's nothing behind marbles, like but why
Demon child.
after yeah, with marbles though. It's a weird demon
Actually,
power to have.
right. It was actually because of synchronicities that I suspected I died in the Titanic, because I'd watch TV and the movie be on. It's always on TV because people love that movie. And I'd be like, all right, I changed the channel. I'll watch a show of Friends and they'll comment about how that ring is as big as the oh my God, the iceberg that the Titanic hit. Couldn't think of words. So just like weird things like that happen constantly in my life, and it's just something I kept noticing.
Always like, and it comes in waves. It seems like, where some days you'll or like
Mm-hmm.
for a couple of weeks you'll have these things where you're just like, come on, like did we really just have that happen again right now? Like, what are the odds of that occurring? And then but then it'll be like a lull in it, so.
Yeah. Music seems to be a big synchronicity too. Like in certain situations, if I'm thinking something and then a song will come on the radio or will play next to my Spotify, that's random shuffle that just happens to go with what I'm thinking.
Singing this city by I can't think who was by, the moon shines on the bay. You know that song by Chicago, is it, I think, or Boston, I don't remember. But I'm singing the song
Yeah.
regardless, all morning, all day, and then my wife and I, we get in the car and I'm singing it again. She's just like rolling her eyes at me, and then we get in the car, turn the radio on, and the lyric I stop singing at, the radio turns on, and it picks up right after that. Keeps going like that, and we look at each other like, what the hell?
Yes.
It was weird.
Oh, chills.
It was very strange. Yeah. But it's like,
it's weird.
Insignificant.
Yeah, it is. And I in choir when I was in high school or whatever, I was in choir and we sang the song Bist du bei mir. It's like a German song. And 2 times I just randomly started singing this German song out of nowhere. And I'm like, why am I singing this? And then a psychic told me, oh, it's because you were a German little girl in 1830. And I was like, oh, maybe that correlates. Anything's possible.
Unless that song was played a lot on the Titanic too. You never know.
Oh, that's true. True.
Well, we had a comment from Sarah who said, you will know if it resonates with you. Let's talk about past life readings. And reading her comment, it actually reminded me that I did do like a partial past life reading a few years back, about 5 or 6 years ago. And to me, it was just like a strange thing because I walked up and she was like, it was like a weird, like half past life, half palm reading. It was at an event
Mm-hmm.
at the museum. And the woman basically said that you're a very helpful human being who's always been there to help others. And I'm like,
That's nice.
Okay, that's nice. And she goes, no, like you've always done something medical. You've always helped somebody using knowledge of the medical field. And at that time, I'd been a firefighter for 14 years, 14 or 15 years. I was an EMT. And it was like, okay, maybe somebody told her something. I mean, it's not like she picked it up off of anything I was wearing because it was actually a Halloween party at the museum. So I was dressed up like some kind of weird ass pirate thing. And it was like, you help people in the medical because you're dressed up like a pirate. It's like,
right.
Oh, that's
well,
cool.
Yeah, pirates are very known to be helpful, right? So.
Yeah, well, I mean, if you need a peg leg, I'll give you the peg leg off
That's
my
true.
stump.
Yeah. They're the first prosthesis. Yeah, right. They're really good at that. That's interesting. I've never had really anything too much resonate with me. Like I said, the only thing for me past life wise would be that I was in some sort of war. Like I said, I forgot to mention too. We used to draw all the time at my grandmother's house, I remember, and I draw like war scenes where guys are shooting each other and there's bombs going off and stuff like that. I'm like, look, Grandma, and she's like, oh God, okay.
Like, oh no.
Okay, well that's weird, but you're drawing, I guess. So,
are you attracted to a certain time period that maybe could resonate with you as like what war or military you're in?
I really like the medieval era for some reason. Like I like the concept of like knights and like kind of anything like back then. But I don't really. I feel like it would be more because of like the whole gun thing. Like I would walk around anything I could pick up with a gun. I was shooting people with a TV remote. You know what I mean? At like 3 years old, walking around like full camo get up. So
Swords are cool, but I want to shoot someone.
Yeah, right, exactly. Maybe I was in both. Maybe I'm that poor guy that gets thrown into all the wars and just a random guy that gets blown up on a battlefield. But hopefully, I think I'm too old now to be in any wars, so I'm good this time around at least. So
we're close.
Yeah.
Can I ask a question?
Maybe.
Because, like, do you think that when you're reincarnated, like, because I've heard of people like grandparents, uncles, like that one story, kind of reincarnating into children. So do you think we, for the most part, stay within our family? Or do you think we kind of spread out?
I've heard that it's that you stay connected, like you were saying before too, like we kind of group together, like you stay in your same group, and like the people you run into in this life are people you've ran into in other lives. Well, they're not the same people, but I think there is a correlation there that you're kind of like on the same like group or team spirits that go down, like, and one time you might be the parent and somebody's the kid and vice versa, and I'm sure like paths cross and it probably isn't like set in stone one way or the other, but I think typically there's a group that you stick with for sure.
I mean,
I think so too.
I'm not necessarily saying that I think my mother reincarnated into my daughter, but I do know, when we found out that Maeve was pregnant, we were, everyone around us was saying, it's going to be a boy, it's going to be a boy. And we were even thinking, yep, it's going to be a boy. And then my mother started getting sick, and we ended up having to put her into hospice, and it was the next morning is when she passed away. Well, the Wednesday after she passed away, we already had an appointment to go and find out what the gender was. So all the way up until my mom's passing, we said it was a boy. It's going to be a boy. We know it's going to be a boy. And then the moment my mom passed, I turned and I looked at Maeve and I said, we're going to find out on Wednesday it's going to be a girl.
No, you did not say that. I got chills again.
Right at that moment. And then Wednesday we went in and found out it was going to be a girl.
You know what that means?
That's amazing.
In another year, if she's like, you got to clean up your room, it's a mess, then you know for sure.
No, you go clean up your room first.
I'm the dad.
Okay.
I'm in charge now.
This time. Yeah, that's funny. That's funny. Yeah. You never know, though. It could be.
I know. There
You
are
have to
no
keep us
rules, which
posted
makes
what-
it, yeah.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, yeah, it's kind of weird because like you kind of want rules, right? You kind of want to know and anticipate. Maybe it's just me being a control freak, but it's uncomfortable to know that you don't know anything and anything is up for grabs. You can, there are no rules.
I mean, it also kind of
What
gives
the rules
you.
are, too.
I don't know about you guys, but it kind of gives me a little bit of comfort of it's not going to be just a hey blackness at the end and that's the end of the movie and you never get to see anymore. There might be something more. I know we're paranormal investigators and we're always out there looking for more stuff, but we still don't know. I mean, as much research and investigation as we could possibly do, and they have been doing for over 100 years now, we never will actually know until that day comes of what happens after we close our eyes for the last time.
Intentional. I think that if for whatever reason we were to explicitly state, like science confirms it, like when you die, it's not over, you come back, blah, 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 it would kind of ruin the whole aspect of life. Like the whole point of life is to kind of have that doubt. So you don't like take this life for granted because you're like, oh, you know what? Well, this didn't work out for me. So I'll just jump off a building now and start over. It's like a video game. You know what I mean? Like we need a little bit of doubt to just make sure that we're not taking advantage of the experience that we're having here. I think that's at least, because I've thought of that too. Like, I mean, it's been a lot of things. Somebody could walk down, and like have a picture of a ghost and go say, I'm a ghost, blah, 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 blah. And people would be like, Photoshop, CGI, not the real thing. You know what I mean? So it's,
right.
It's kind of like, that's why it's there. I think it's the one like thing that keeps us all together.
Yeah. I mean, that's
I like that.
Like I wanted to talk about this past life thing is because it's not something that a skeptic can just like throw out and be like, nope, didn't really happen. It's like, that's a 2-year-old who just told me about, they were in the Civil War and they got shot with a musket ball and they were carried a Springfield rifle. And it's like, that's coming from a 2-year-old.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly. It's crazy. Yeah, and it can actually be validated, which is even the coolest part about it, is you could say,
yes.
But,
right.
I don't know. Yeah. I think that
you
still need
pick
that
out
doubt,
a face. Yeah, I agree. I like that. I like that theory. You still need that doubt. That's a good point.
Well, I think it's just about time to wrap up this episode. I want to thank Steph and Al for coming on and helping me babble my way through this episode. We missed Rich tonight. He had something else going on. Hopefully he can join us for the next episode, and hopefully that will be in 2 weeks. We'll throw out what that topic will be then. Until then, we want to thank Disruption Network and Todd, he's sitting there just playing on his phone, making sure I don't screw up his computers here. Also, if anybody out there listening has an idea for a television show, or not television, but an online show that you want to do, reach out to Disruption Network. They have everything here set up for you. Just reach out, go on the website. While you're on there, why don't you check out some of the other shows they got? They got a lot of good episodes and different lineups. I believe the Sammys are still up, so get up there, vote for, it's Music Mondays? Yeah. Local Music Mondays, Disruption Network, vote for them. They're in the top 4 right now, so hopefully they can win a Sammy here. And until next time, we got Steph, Al, and I'm Kevin with Agent Paranormal saying, we'll scare you later.